Item number 4 is visitors item. Ms. Schmidt, do we have any visitors this evening?
Yes, Mayor, we have several cards this evening.
All right.
The first card was submitted by David Chenoweth, 500 South Waterview.
All right.
Dave Chenoweth, 500 South Waterview. Back a couple of months ago, I ended up getting an email from EA about the Texas Association of Counties and the presentation that was there. The title of the presentation was, "You're Not Paranoid, They Are After You." In this, they contained a list of what I call their enemies list. People like Grover Norquist, who wants to cut government in half within 25 years. The Libertarians, who believe that the answer to America's problems are the same commitment that earned the freedom that America has now, its greatness. The Americans for Prosperity, they want limited government, free markets, national level, state level, local level. Champion people who are starting out new businesses and physical and regulatory restraint. Club for Growth believe in prosperity and opportunity comes through economic freedom. Freedom works. They fight for lower taxes, less government, economic freedom for all Americans. Americans for tax reform. Oppose all tax increases is a matter of principles. National Taxpayers Union. They work towards lower taxes, smaller government. American Legislative Exchange, promote freedom and liberty. Samuel Adams, what all of these groups have in common is they want lower taxes, less government, more personal rights for people, and restrict government rights more. Now, just the opposite of that would be higher taxes, bigger government, more rights for government, less rights for individual, taxpayers' rights, and less transparency. As you know, they've hired the lobbyist Fred Hill to do their lobbying down in Austin. He apparently is going to lobby against all of these items that look like they're good for people, they're bad for government. Y'all have hired him for $75,000 a year to lobby. And I would expect that he won't be lobbying against these good ideas for taxpayers. He's going to be lobbying for the same thing like Senate Bill 700, his opposition to caps and, well, appraisal caps. There's several others. What it all comes down to is we taxpayers are paying Fred Hill through the taxes y'all collect and give to him to lobby against us. For me, that seems like a perversion of our tax money. I don't think that that's a right thing to do. And in effect, what that makes me think, when I look at y'all, tax and spend liberal. Y'all want to raise taxes, you want to increase government, and that's the wrong thing for me as a taxpayer to be paying for. Y'all give my tax money to him so that he can lobby against me. One other thing I forgot and I left out is one of the horrible ways that all of these companies or all of these organizations operate is their policy papers provide a factual foundation for issues they promote. The TAC, whoever put this together, figured that that's a terrible thing that people would actually use facts to promote their issues. So anyways, his contract is coming up within a couple of months, and I would sure hope that y'all get rid of him and stop using taxpayer money to lobby against us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schmidt, do we have another visitor?
Yes, Mayor, the next card would be Jimmy Schnurr, 1514 Somerset Place.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jimmy Schnurr, 1514 Somerset Place in Richardson. As I've expressed to each of you in the past, I've been concerned about statements made by our city management in response to questions that have been raised about the fact that the golf course operations at Sherrill Park have never been audited since the Golf Fund's inception in 1995. In fact, Mr. Keffler, our city manager, has publicly stated that he chooses not to audit the operations of the contractor, Ronnie Glanton Inc., and the golf course. He said that the contractor supplies weekly reports that are reviewed by the city manager's office, therefore no audit is necessary. Now, subsequent to his comments made this spring, in its August 3rd briefing to the city council, the city manager's office, in a 2-hour-long briefing to this council, painted a very rosy picture of both the financial health of the golf fund and the operations of the contractor. Curiously, it was the assistant city manager that made the very presentation that was a report that was prepared by the land appraiser that the city paid $12,500 to prepare the report. I found it very curious that the very guy we paid $12,500 to didn't make the presentation to the council. In its briefing, the city manager's office conveniently failed to mention that the golf course operation is bleeding money. There's a $98,000 loss this year that was just reported 2 weeks ago in our annual actual audit, or annual fund actuals that came in. We're projected to have an $86,000 loss next year, and as stated by the contractor Ronnie Glanton previously, there's approximately $100,000 in renovations to the greens that are immediately necessary, or as he said, the city's going to start losing money because of the state of the greens. What I find troubling is that there has been zero public discussion concerning any plan to stop the trend of these large annual losses in the golf fund. Excuses concerning the weather and the rack rate were put forth, but no discussion followed concerning the plan to address these ongoing losses. Now, with this backdrop, I did a little bit of research on my own here because I was trying to see, what's going on here, and quite frankly, I'm very troubled as to what I found. Now, in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to try to summarize for you the error-filled weekly reports that have been provided by the Golf Pro operator that cannot be trusted, the habitual TABC violations and fines assessed to the golf course, which include repeated violations of improper financial transactions and subterfuge, as found by the TABC, why and how the city manager's office is compromised by conflicts of interest in this matter concerning the golf course, and how the city manager's office is personally involved in the habitual TABC violations, and why and how our city attorney can't even give this council legal advice concerning monies that are likely owed to the city by the golf course bar operations because of his own conflicts of interest and personal involvement in the habitual TABC violations. Now, all this is documented in public records. Finally, I will suggest a public hearing that is necessary due to the voluminous supporting documentation that I found concerning what I'm about to summarize, as well as I'd like to request an independent outside forensic audit of both Ronnie Glanton Inc. and Sherrill Park Municipal Golf Course Inc. Now, concerning these weekly reports that Mr. Keffler references that are submitted to the city, they cannot be trusted as they contain numerous errors. These reports, which I've got a copy of 1 week that was submitted to me by the city, these reports is where Ronnie Glanton Inc. tells the city, here's everything that came into the city and here's your cut. Now, keep in mind that there's approximately $3.5 million of revenue that comes in annually to through the golf course city's asset. Yet on your budget, it only reflects the approximately $2 million that Ronnie Glanton tells you, here's your cut. What's fascinating is that in this one single report, I picked a random week because my original request I asked for 3 years so I could review them. I was told it would be about $1,000 for the open record, so I just picked one random week. In one random week, I found 12 errors. The errors include in here that the contractor undercharged green fees for 288 rounds of golf in this. Now, he also charged the correct amount in other days, but some days he undercharged. There's an entry in here where on the same day they charged green fees for a weekday green fee, but there was also a charge for a weekend green fee. I don't know how that occurs on the same day. It's either a weekend or a weekday. The cart totals that are shown on the backup summary reports don't match the summary that's given to the city. So the backup information doesn't match the summary. There's merchandise shown in the detailed computer printouts that show purchases of shirts, shoes, and visors that were purchased, but no money was forwarded to the city, and they don't show up on the summary reports. There's also a $1,250 just phantom
what we're going to
charge.
have to do. We've run out of time. But we will have an opportunity
Well,
to
could I
have
ask
some
the
more
council to
dialogue.
please suspend the rules and give me some additional time so I can get
Well,
into this?
let me do this. Until we're going to approach our time limit issue, which is problematic to some degree, but that's what we have today. What we'd like to do is, if you could, I don't know how much of this you're willing to give to us, or
Well,
if you,
this is records that your office
all
provided.
right, then
Mr.
we have them. So
What I'm concerned about,
Yeah.
Mayor, is that your city staff has been compromised here. There's a lot of violations in here that your city staff and your city attorney are involved in.
I'll tell you what we're going to do.
And I want this to be in a very public forum.
Well-
I do not trust that I can sit down with this staff and with the council in
Okay.
private and get its just due.
Okay.
I think it's a discussion that the public needs to have because they have not received the full information.
All right.
City staff has only presented part of the picture because of their
Okay.
conflicts.
Thank you, Mr. Schnurr. We appreciate you.
Okay, thank you. I'll see you at the next hearing.
Okay. Do we have another visitor card?
Yes, Mayor, the next speaker is Bonnie Wells, 2107 West Prairie Creek Drive.
Gentlemen, I am Bonnie Wells. I've been a resident of Richardson, a taxpayer and a voter since 1978. And I have to admit I haven't paid too much attention to the city council except until the last few years. And in the last race, I supported a challenger to an incumbent, not because the incumbent was horrible, but because I thought this person had been in office for almost a quarter of a century, and it was time for new leadership. I, along with the majority of the Richardson voters in 2007, believe in term limits. Those serving on the city council at that time of passing, term limits were grandfathered in. And so in actuality, some on the council will be able to serve more than 3 decades in a position on the city council. We've heard it said that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, this was said in 1887 because I Googled it to look it up. So this saying has been along for a long time because we're dealing with human beings. And I'm not here to make accusations of corruption. I'll leave that to other people who have detailed facts. But I have observed an atmosphere of arrogance in many of our city leaders. I recently witnessed this atmosphere of arrogance on December 1st when I was in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to hear the case of Gordon versus the City of Richardson concerning violations of the Open Meetings Act in our city charter. I was really glad I went to hear this case before the Court of Appeals. Each side was given 20 minutes to present their case to a panel of 3 judges, and the judges could interrupt and ask questions to the attorneys. Well, the City of Richardson's argument was that this case was moot since the city charter had since been changed and allowed closed meetings of all the council. Mr. Pete Smith, the attorney for the City of Richardson, stated that Mr. Gordon had no standing in this case. After all, Mr. Gordon was just a citizen. Yet in the earlier case, the judge found that the city did violate the Open Meetings Act and our city charter. The city council immediately appointed a panel of like-minded people that would agree with them, with no outside citizen input, and used city-funded entity, the Chamber of Commerce, to push your agenda. political advertising by the council itself supporting the passage of the amendment to the city charter was in direct violation of the election code. A mailer was sent to the Richardson residents with bold letters in red that said, "Vote for Richardson Amendment Propositions 1 and 2." And the names listed on this mailer included 6 of the 7 council members, including the mayor. The end result was that the change in the city charter that allowed closed meetings now would have no limitations, and they had the right to conduct these meetings anywhere far from the prying eyes of Richardson residents. Mr. Gordon's attorney said that they were also seeking the minutes of the closed session that occurred before the charter was changed. The City of Richardson's attorney, Mr. Smith, said they, meaning just regular citizens of Richardson, I'm one of them, who are taxpayers who pay the salary of Mr. Smith, also said that we are not entitled to know what goes on in these closed meetings. And this is the same arrogance that continues in the City Council today. As the attorney for the City of Richardson, Mr. Smith is employed by the city and reflects the attitude of the City Council. This attitude of condescension toward the little people, the taxpayers, the residents of Richardson, should not be tolerated. And as a citizen, I will continue to urge residents of Richardson to be informed, and I hope people come down to these meetings, however boring they think it will be, to stay involved, to get the facts, and to make a difference in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is E.A. MacDowell, 403 Waterview.
All right.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
I, too, attended the Tuesday meeting at the court, and I have never witnessed such arrogance in all my life by a city attorney. I want to tell you some of the things he said. When he walked into the court was full. There wasn't another place to sit. And when he started his diatribe to the 3 councilmen, or the 3 lawyers, he said that these people are here to rub the city's nose in it and prove that I told you so. I didn't go down there for that. I went down there to hear the argument of who was right and who was wrong. The citizens were there to show interest in matters concerning the city. And I think all of you should have been there, and not a one of you were there. His next absurd statement was what Bonnie said, that the plaintiff was a citizen without standing in the court. And this is the next statement that I want to tell you. He said, and I hope all of you think about it very, very hard, because it goes to the heart of our problem. Judge Lang asked him, do you think the citizens have a right to know that what goes on in closed meetings, the secret meetings? He said, it is none of their business. That's what your lawyer said, and you all back him up. And that is wrong. The above statements were my impression of the hearing, and I was totally disappointed that our city would employ such a lawyer. And you have the right, and I ask you to get rid of him. And that's my opinion. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker, Mayor, is Jim Millet.
All right.
Seats come up real fast. You get out. Good evening, Council, Mayor.
Good evening.
This evening I thought I would come down and mention something that I've noticed as I drive up and down Arapahoe Road quite often, pretty much every day. And I noticed since '98 there were houses and all of a sudden more green space that was coming up, and I was always wonder, well, gosh, something must be going on, but I don't know what it is. And the other day I noticed in the morning news that there was an article about, why that was being done. So I thought I'd get some information on it. So I asked the city, could you give me the addresses and the prices that these properties were paid for. And I, in that same request, also asked for the paperwork of any vision or plan or idea of how that property was going to be utilized. What I got 8 color copies of 8 different visions of what was going to happen to that property, but absolutely nothing in writing. So I emailed Pam back and I said, well, surely somebody had to say something about how we got the copies. There got to be something in writing about this. Well, there isn't. That's it. I'm kind of perplexed. This past year has been the worst year for residential real estate in anybody's memory. When I got the summary of the purchases, I looked at it, and there was one purchase that just leaped right out at me. So I asked again, I said, well, you know, where did we get the appraisals for these properties? And I was told there weren't any appraisals. We didn't have an appraiser. I said, well, where did the prices come from that you used to negotiate? Well, the prices came from the DCAD numbers. So I looked up the DCAD numbers, and I looked at the summary of the cost of the purchases, and one of them really sticks out, and that's the address at 434 and 436 Arapahoe. Those were essentially 3 lots that were vacant. The DCAD value on those lots was $55,000. And according to this summary purchase activity, we paid $495,000 for those. Almost 10 times what DCAD value was. And I'm concerned, did we have a real estate broker that negotiated for those, or did the city negotiate that on its own? The other purchases that were made this year were a minimum of 25% above DCAD values. We've still got one, as I understand it, that's going to be closing up on the 31st. I would hope that we got a little closer to the real value than what we pay for these 3 lots. And it just concerns me from the standpoint, this year we were told we were having a budget problem. We're going to have $2 million shortfall. It just seems to me that if we're spending almost 10 times for vacant property across the street and we have no purpose, no written purpose for it, that's a little strange in this budget year. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'd like to, if someone has an idea of how that occurred, I'd be happy to hear about it at some later time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Millet.
Mayor, the next speaker is Nathan Morgan.
Good evening. Instead of going off and talking about the countless convenient misinterpretations or new language that has been developed to interpret the law and city charter and so forth, I thought I'd add a little levity to tonight and tell you about riding the DART train. I ride the DART train every once in a while, going down into downtown, and when I am surrounded by the derelicts and the middle cases and the troublemakers, I try to be a good Caucasian ambassador to them. So this gentleman was sitting next to me, of another ethnic origin, and I decided to try to break the ice with him. Well, the train driver gave me an opportunity to do that because this guy was horrible. He'd put on the brakes and he'd put on the accelerator, and he was fits and starts and jerking around. Finally, I turned to the guy next to me and I said, you know, this guy drives worse than my grandmother. And the guy responded, your grandmama drive a train? I said, well, no. He didn't get what I said. Kind of a misinterpretation. Well, there's a railroad theme here, and that railroad theme is that many of these initiatives and programs and things that get slid through the executive sessions and quietly added at the last minute in the work session and then voted upon in the regular council session. Case in point is one very tonight. Okay? I'd submit to you that we ought to be holding these meetings in a railroad station. So, let me leave you with another situation that I observed. There's a band of outlaws on their horses, standing along the railroad tracks out in the wilderness. They're getting ready to rob the train. They're going to hijack it. Train's late. Leader of the group who'd taken them down this trail was, led the group. One rather dim-witted person in the crew asked, I wonder who's holding up the train? And the leader says, we are. Good night.
Mayor, our last court is from Cheri Duncan-Hubert, 1614 Salem Court.
Okay.
Good evening. My apologies for not being present for your November 30th meeting when you talked about the financials for year end again. And I am completely dismayed with you gentlemen. Not one question came of any relevance to anything of this budget, and the two questions you asked former Mayor Mitchell, I don't even understand. I have huge issues with sweeping $1.1 million for the health care. I want to know what you didn't spend out of each one of those funds. I also have great issue with the fact that you're back to just presenting four. You're not presenting a full financial picture, as the charter states. We're sitting here at time for an audit. I want to know if you're going to audit all accounts, which is what the charter states. I want to know, let's go to specifics on your little handout here. Municipal court revenues finished down, and you anticipate court activity to increase because of your higher staffing of apprentice police officers. So where is that relevant on a cost of a police officer for less revenues? I don't even know where that makes sense to you. You're not even talking apples and oranges. Professional services ended the year 365 because of cutbacks in legal fees. The maintenance category finished the year 138% below, and you call this a savings. When you maintain something and it costs $136,000, $2,000 is what's saved. If you put in your budget something like you did 2 years ago, $25,000 to rebuild Santa's house, and it only cost you $15,000, then you save $10,000. I'd like to know how you spent those monies. Is it in all of these sweeps that you do from fund to fund? And where do we get to see where those funds end up? Because it ends up, in my humble opinion, in the unallocated reserve fund. Mr. Johnson, the last time we met, you asked me if I thought you were stupid. I don't think any of you are stupid. I just wonder if you think we are.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other visitors?
Those are all I have, Mayor.
All right. Anybody have any comments? All right.